Now let's talk some hip hop, man. I want to talk to Puff right now.
Yes.
Now it was this documentary that claimed, which we know wasn't true.
Yeah. Check this out. We don't talk about things that are nonsense. We don't even entertain nonsense, my brother. So we're not even gonna go there, with all due respect, but I appreciate you as a journalist asking.
When people say they ain't scared of P. Diddy, I tell them you don't know the man. You ain't ever been in close quarters with Brother Love. You ain't ever had the unfortunate honor of doing business with the bad boy chief executive. I also tell them that makes you one lucky human being, because anyone who has had anything to do with Puff Daddy is either financially ruined, behind bars, or 6 feet under. And that's a lesson KEEFE D learned the hard way. Before he met P. Diddy, KEEFE's life was fairly normal. I mean, he was a thug, all right, but at least whatever shit he had going was mobile.
Said that you was on top of the world until you met Puffy. What you mean by that?
Man, I was getting 300 kilos a month, man. Balling, man. Didn't nobody know about me. My shit was smooth, dude. My shit was laid out smooth, man. I met your mother.
The moment KEEFE D met Diddy, his life turned into a living hell, and the situation went nuclear after the Tupac hit. Truth is, P. Diddy KEEFE D over in more ways than one, and I'm about to show you how. For those of y'all who still think P. Diddy ain't a threat, I'm about to show you receipts from as far back as the early 90s. This is why KEEFE D is really scared of P. Diddy. Diddy versus KEEFE D.
There's more ruthless people in the business world than in the street. You know, like they just have subtleties to their tactics. How they do things is more, you know.
Suit and tie.
Yeah, it's not confrontational. It's just, you know, but they're doing it.
Let's imagine you are a ruthless hitman and I am a multi-millionaire music mogul. Now let's imagine I need your services. More specifically, I want you to help me kill someone, and I promise you $1 million as payment for getting the job done. Now, let's say you got the job done as promised. You fulfilled your end of the bargain. You killed the person I wanted you to kill, did your own part. And now it was my turn to fulfill my end of the bargain, send you the $1 million as promised. But then nothing happens. I suddenly become unreachable. I disappear from your radar. 1 year, 2 years, 3, and nothing. No money, nothing. What would you do? Well, this is the exact story that KEEFE D has been telling every podcaster that'll give him the time of day. It's the same story he told the police back in 2008. According to the man, P. Diddy promised him $1 million for the hit on Tupac and didn't pay him when he got the job done. But even worse than receiving nothing, KEEFE D did nothing about it. From 1996, when Pac met his untimely demise, till 2008, when he would eventually snitch to the police, KEEFE D did not try to get his money from P. Diddy. Why? Well, again, like I said before, KEEFE D was scared. But wait, there's a little distinction we gotta make here. KEEFE wasn't just scared of Diddy. He was scared of the people that rolled with Diddy. Diddy moved around with deep-fried hardcore Crips. But hey, you say, wasn't KEEFE also a Crip himself? Well, you're right, but this was different. I don't need to educate you about the hierarchy in gang culture. KEEFE was a West Coast Crip, and Diddy's crew were all East Coast. And while KEEFE was disengaged from the inner workings of the music industry as he slugged it out on the streets, Diddy and his crew, as a result of being in New York, were familiar with the ruthlessness that went beyond streets and into the boardroom. In fact, they were responsible for most of it. Diddy was responsible for most of it, but I'm gonna get to that story in a bit. In the meantime, there was one individual in the New York Crip set that sent the fear of God down KEEFE D's spine. I'm talking about Eric Von Zip Martin.
Zip, who knows about Puffy's offer to KEEFE, says this is a good time to take care of that thing.
This is right here. This is a perfect opportunity, baby.
That was Zip talking?
Yeah.
Because of what happened with Wayne. Zip offers KEEFE D the .40 caliber Glock that he has stashed in his Mercedes out in the parking lot.
You heard that right. Zip was the one who gave KEEFE D the weapon that was eventually used to kill Pac. He even followed them with a van on their first attempt at Pac that night at the club before leaving KEEFE D to do his own thing. But wait a minute, it gets even crazier. On the night that Biggie died, Zip was also there. In fact, witnesses say that they saw him talk to Biggie for a few minutes on that fateful night as he organized bodyguards for Puffy, Lil Cease, and Biggie himself. Now, I ain't saying Zip had anything to do with Biggie's death. That would be crazy, considering he was the godfather of Biggie's son and he dated Diddy's mom at some point. But you must know that Zip was more than just some intimidating Crip guarding Puff. He was an OG of the underbellies of Harlem. In fact, word on the street, they say he ruled the Harlem underworld on and off for decades, following in the footsteps of his mentor, the original godfather of Harlem, Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. By the late 80s to early 90s, Eric Von Zip Martin knew every OG on the East Coast. He kept tabs on every new kid in the block and moved seamlessly between the entertainment world and the underworld. He was a deeply connected man, a proper gangster, old school, and this was how he met Puffy. So do you now understand why KEEFE D was terrified of Zip? Funny thing is, Zip was KEEFE D's main contact to Diddy, and yet he didn't even dare imagine that Zip kept the $1 million from him. In fact, what he told interviewers like DJ Vlad was that he thought Diddy hadn't cut the check in the first place. That's what fear does to a man. But then, when the police got him under wraps and did the whole proffer deal with him, they revealed to him that Diddy had indeed cut the check. Now, KEEFE D might not have been the sharpest tool in the shed, but he wasn't slow. He knew who was first in line to get the money, and the person would be none other than the man himself, Eric Von Zip Martin. The FBI confirmed it. Turns out that Von Zip had divested the millions into his nightclub, rendering the $1 million untraceable. They couldn't link it to Pac's murder. The bounty was now a he said who said. Diddy was hella smart, and Eric Von Zip Martin was a genius. But see, this is where it gets crazy, because now that they had this information, the next line of action for the police was to get Eric Von Zip to spill, and the only person they felt could do that was KEEFE D. Funny enough, KEEFE agreed. He agreed to rat on Von Zip. The LAPD bankrolled a New York trip for KEEFE D.
3 cops that was on the task force that Greg Kadings and them had. He went out to New York, flew from LA with them on the plane, accompanied them, hanging out with them for 3-4 days in a hotel, and was trying to set up Von Zip.
You know what's funny? KEEFE D started getting a sugar rush with all of the help he was receiving from the LAPD. You see, they had his in their hand, got him on drug charges that would have seen the homie in jail for the rest of his life. So the reason why KEEFE was cooperating was because they was gonna release him only if gave them info. What they didn't realize was that KEEFE was a dog who was always looking for a master. And so when they asked him for info, he gave them a biopic. And when they asked him to get them to Eric Von Zip, the man was suddenly ready to approach Puffy. But the LAPD were smart enough to know that there was no way in hell Puffy would grant KEEFE an interview after 12 years of silence. They had to get to Diddy through Zip, but this alternative didn't work either, because when KEEFE approached Von Zip all wired up, the Harlem Godfather was smart enough to keep his lips zipped. He didn't say nothing. And the legal vacation to the Big Apple turned out to be a waste. But now you gotta wonder what the hell happened to Eric Von Zip after that chance encounter. Well, Puffy dropped his Yep. In fact, in his last days on Earth, as he battled the cancer that killed him, Eric Von Zip would tell a hood journalist that Puffy had stabbed him in the back, abandoned him, completely wiped him off the slate like they didn't have history together. And this is why I began this section of the video with that 50 Cent clip, because sometimes you shouldn't fear the man that can kill you. That's the worst they can do. What you should fear is the man that can keep you alive wanting death and never getting it. You should fear the man that can pull the rug from beneath your feet and make you doubt everything you thought you had, make you beg for everything you thought you had. Because if you thought Eric Von Zip and KEEFE D were the man's only victims, then think again. Diddy's rise to billion-dollar status was on a ladder made out of the bones of other artists that he used, dumped, cheated, and wiped off the culture into a faint relevant. Diddy is a real-life villain.
The thief is the worst thing. His hand should be chopped. Her hand should be chopped off. His or her hand should be, that's the way I feel about somebody taking something from somebody that ain't theirs, you know what I'm saying?
If I didn't know Diddy and the context of this video, I would be fooled. While this looks like Diddy calling out biblical punishments for theft, you should know that he was guilty of the crime he was condemning. The context here had to do with Mase, an artist that kind of took Biggie's place on Diddy's rooster after his demise. His debut album, Harlem World, achieved significant commercial success, establishing him as a prominent figure in the rap scene. But all of a sudden, 1999, Mase shocked the music industry by announcing his retirement from rap to pursue a calling in the ministry. This decision surprised fans and even Puffy, who reportedly was caught off guard by Mase's sudden departure from the music scene. But then in 2000, he reconciled with Diddy and attempted to revive his rap career, but there was already fire under the hood. Turns out Puffy was owing Mase money, or at least that was what Mase was saying, but Puffy insisted he wasn't owing Mase nothing, and he dared the man to bring receipts, claiming he would pay him in 24 hours if he could. In fact, he went further to state that Mase actually owed him a $3 million advance from an album that never happened. A diss track here, an IG caption there, Puffy kept his own steady, not flinching and reportedly expressing confusion about Mase's grievances. If you're asking me, Puffy was toying with Mase, because while it is possible that Mase breached contract with his mid-career evangelical conversion, Puffy owned the man's publishing and refused to let it go. In a since-deleted IG caption, Mase would say that he offered Puffy $2 million for his publishing, but was told to play auction with an European guy who was ready to buy if for more. Ruthless. Funny enough, Diddy had bought it decades earlier for just $20K. Now, it's easy to pick sides when it comes to Mase's case, but what happened with the locks was just atrocious.
Did this, man, y'all did the whole campaign, let the locks go and all that. Y'all ain't want to be down with Bad Boy, so we let y'all go. Y'all want to be down with us, we let y'all go, we keep it moving. But to get on there and portray like somebody got to go and steal and rob and be shysting y'all, that ain't really correct, you know what I'm saying? First of all, I'm at my office right now. I'm always accessible.
If you know the Lox, then you know this interview. The infamous Hot 97 radio interview between the Lox and Diddy in 1999. But before these two were locking heads on live radio, the LOX crew, Jadakiss, Styles P, and Chic Louch had signed to Bad Boy Records and had come to define a period in hip-hop known as the Bad Boy era. But after their first phase, they began accusing Diddy of holding them back, not financing them, and not giving them enough creative freedom to really push their music to the next level. And of course, they were broke even though their music was successful. Why? Well, like Mace, Diddy had screwed them in the contract that they had not read properly. Check all of Diddy's artists, this was the running gag. After their first studio album, which was often incredibly successful, they all began complaining that Diddy was not supporting them. According to the Lox, Diddy was a dirty businessman who had used them and dumped them. According to Diddy, he was a businessman who had invested a lot in the group's success. I'm not going to run through the rooster too long, but for anyone who's going to come to Diddy's defense, I dare you to find one artist from Bad Boy record that didn't have the same contractual issue with Diddy. Truth is, every one of them served to propel Diddy's artistically mediocre career. And I say artistically mediocre because if you remove all of the collabs he did with these artists he kicked to the curb, you have nothing. There's no hip-hop head worth his salt that would call Diddy their favorite rapper. But it gets worse, because while it looks like Diddy hated these artists and just signed them to use them, the way Diddy treated the ones he loved was even worse. Enter Shine, an artist you most likely have never heard of if you was born in this century.
You know what happened with Diddy, with Brother Love? I don't really blame that on him now, as much as I did then, because I did go through a stage of bitterness.
You're human.
So what did Diddy do to Shine? December of 1999, a feud between Diddy and another customer devolves into a shooting incident at Club New York, a nightclub in Manhattan. Both Diddy and Shine were present at the club that night, and the shooting results in 3 innocent bystanders being injured that night. When the law would come cracking down, Diddy faced charges related to weapons possession and bribery. Shine, on the other hand, faced more severe charges, including assault, gun possession, and reckless endangerment. But it wasn't just that. Diddy or Diddy's lawyers were turning Shine into the sacrificial lamb. In 2001, both Diddy and Shine went to trial. Diddy was acquitted of all charges, while Shine was found guilty on charges of assault, gun possession, and reckless endangerment. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Throughout the trial, they threw the man under the bus to preserve Diddy. It was a daylight sacrifice. Now, Shine might be better off right now being a politician and all, but if conspiracy theories are anything to be believed, Diddy kept the worst of himself for the best of his homies. You know who I'm talking about, Notorious Big Yup. There are many who believe Diddy was responsible for Biggie's death, and the reason they believe this is because of the shifty moves Diddy was making right before Biggie's demise. First off, there was a rumor that Biggie wanted to leave Diddy's label because he didn't like the contract he was under. Something about too little money for the kind of buzz he was making. Sound familiar? Then Diddy purchased Biggie's publishing for an undisclosed, reportedly modest sum. Then Biggie died. Tell me that's a coincidence and I'll sell you a bridge in Tokyo. Anyway, since no one can confirm what really happened, and since we are way closer to finding Tupac's killer than finding the ones who took Biggie's life, we just gotta wait. In the meantime, you should know that Diddy ain't just the type to take the soul or send goons after you. He's also perfectly capable of breaking your body himself, and he's done it on multiple occasions. In fact, Diddy's childhood was more than enough prediction of that kind of trajectory of his life. Diddy is a real-life gangster.
Being that my father, he was killed when I was 3 years old. I don't have like a lot of memories of my father. You know, they say, you know, you can't miss something you never had.
Diddy's pops was Melvin Earl Combs, a member of the U.S. Air Force and an associate of convicted New York drug dealer Frank Lucas. When Melvin was just 33 and Diddy was 3, he got shot to death while sitting in his car on Central Park West. This was the background to Diddy's childhood. He grew up without a father, and it would eventually lay the foundation for Diddy's first enterprise, selling drugs while he was a student at Washington, D.C.'s Howard University. In his words, back in the early 90s, I saw a lot of my friends coming around with big wads of cash, so I decided to try it out. But soon enough, the law showed itself, and he almost got caught. I went out on the strip in Maryland, but when I got there, within about 5 minutes, somebody yelled, "Jump out," a warning of undercover police, so I started to run. There were helicopters, they were trying to break down doors. After that, I told God he didn't have to worry about me going down that road. Diddy came out of that incident a changed man, and fortunately for him, unscathed, at least to a certain extent. He moved all of his sensibilities to music. It was this move that gave birth to the sheer insanity that we know today as Diddy's Bad Boy empire.
So I started looking on the back of all my favorite records,
and all my favorite records were made by Uptown Records. They had Guy, Heavy D, I'll Be Sure, and all my other favorite records were made by Def Jam. So I called both those record companies every day, and I said, you know, I want to work for free. I want an internship.
I think it's important to mention that no one really thinks Diddy is undeserving of the success he got. No one can pretend like he didn't work hard for it, but you must also know that he played the game efficiently well to get there. Like I said before, it's a ladder of bones that took Diddy to the very top, not just his hard work. And sometimes he set those bones with his own fist. Diddy got the internship he was pushing for, and he dove in head first. He dropped out of college and began working at Uptown Records full-time in New York City. In just 1 year, he had moved up to vice president. He was just 19 at the time. The shot caller and his mentor at the time was Andre Harrell. Diddy learned a whole lot from Andre, but as time passed, Andre began to realize he couldn't control Diddy. The young blood was a hothead. He was eccentric and was reportedly prone to roaming the offices with his shirt off or lounging on conference room tables at meetings. According to his assistant at the time, Diddy might have been a problem, but he was hella charismatic, and because of that, people wanted to be around him. Unfortunately, all of that charisma didn't quite cut it when he punched a gaffer on the 1991 movie Strictly Business. Andre was convinced Diddy was crazy. Diddy insisted that the gaffer was being disrespectful. Eventually, Andre Harrell would fire Diddy, and almost immediately, Diddy would have his revenge. In just 3 months, he created Bad Boys Entertainment, a label that would eventually become bigger than Uptown Records. Now, I'm not about to slug out the details of what happened with Bad Boy and all of that jazz. We're here for the violence, the raw bad boy machismo that most people don't realize was in Diddy's repertoire. In April 1999, Diddy was charged with assaulting Steve Stout of Interscope Records. Stout was the manager for Nas, with whom Diddy had filmed a video earlier that year for the song Hate Me Now. Diddy was concerned that the video, which featured a shot of Nas and him being crucified, was blasphemous. He asked for his scenes on the cross to be pulled, but after the video aired unedited on MTV on April 15th, Stout said Diddy made a trip to his office, walked up to his desk, and without saying a word, punched him in the face. Stout said Diddy then beat him to the ground with a telephone in front of 2 of Stout's associates. Of course, Diddy Combs was charged with second-degree assault and criminal mischief. And of course, he got away with it with a slap on the wrist, getting sentenced to attend a 1-day anger management class. Now, some of y'all might say that all of that is in the past, and that Diddy is all about love now. I mean, didn't he legally change his middle name to Love? Well, I call bullshit on that, because as recently as 2015, Diddy was arrested for a kettlebell assault case on his son's college coach. The violence hasn't gone anywhere. The man just has fewer battles these days, and that's because he practically won it all. He's got nothing to prove. He won it all, and probably that's what makes him a special kind of dangerous. The kind of danger that would discourage KEEFE D from approaching to claim the $1 million bounty owed him, because anyone who could win both the battle and the war against a man like Suge Knight deserves to be left alone. Yeah, I left the best for last. Diddy defeated Suge Knight.
So if you shoot somebody, you go to jail forever. So the kids, you don't want to go to jail forever, right? So they got this new thing out there. People sell them all the time. They got this stuff they get blood from somebody with AIDS. Yeah. And then they shoot you with it.
Oh,
so
well, that seems bad.
That's a slow death.
Yeah.
An easy thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, no.
See, I can understand why folks are terrified of Suge. I understand why anyone would have looked at that maniacal red teddy bear in the 90s and thought, I must be in hell, because why am I seeing this in the flesh? I understand. But what I do not understand is why anyone would insist that they are more terrified of the death row boss than the bad boy exec. Yeah, you tell me. Think about the East Coast, West Coast from every angle, and only one name remains to this day. P. Diddy. He beat the sugar bear. But hey, if you're still doubting, first question, whose business survived the 90s? Definitely not Suge. By the late 90s, his label was nosediving, and he was embroiled in so much scandal that the only way was down. And while it is true that Bad Boy also suffered a downward trend in both popularity and relevance, Diddy had diversified. He had other ventures that stayed successful. He knew when to sell, when to switch between owners. So while Suge lost money getting into the 21st century, Diddy only got richer. Second question, now, who is currently living in the 21st century? A completely free man. Definitely not Suge. Suge has had a long rap sheet of legal issues that was sure to either end him in jail or in a coffin 6 feet deep. While Diddy beat all of his cases and avoided the pen at all costs, even when it meant trading his musical brother's life for his, Suge was nothing but a reckless mess. In 2001, Suge was sentenced to 9 years in prison for violating his parole, allegedly due to a fight that occurred hours before Tupac's tragic demise in Las Vegas. He served 5 years and was released in August 2001. You would think that would be the end. Then, of course, you would only say that if you didn't know Suge. In 2003, he got into a minor altercation with a nightclub valet, punched him in the face, and had had to spend 10 months in the pen for it. 2 years later, in 2005, Suge once again stared down the gavel of the law when he was arrested in Cali after police found marijuana in his vehicle during a traffic spot. He was booked on charges violating parole. He was released a week later and placed under house arrest for 2 months. This time, he was lucky, but not his record label. All of that legal drama and all of that blue smoke resulted in the painful death of Death Row Records in 2006 as they filed for bankruptcy. With the death of Death Row went the finances of Suge. He was now going down so fast you could almost feel sorry for him. Almost. By 2008, Suge was once again arrested on drug and aggravated assault charges. 2 cops saw him punching a naked woman with one hand and holding a knife in the other at a parking lot off the Las Vegas Strip. Suge had reportedly been partying in a nightclub less than 24 hours after he posted a $19,000 bail on charges of felony assault with a deadly weapon, drug possession, and misdemeanor domestic violence. It was clear he was in self-destruct mode. Free fall, folks, but the end was still pretty far off. The devil had Suge in his plans. In 2012, Suge was arrested in Las Vegas after police found drugs in his vehicle. When law enforcement ran his name, they found multiple warrants for prior traffic violations. He was reportedly placed on 3 years of unsupervised probation for driving with a suspended license. In that same 2012, Diddy was estimated to be worth a staggering $550 million by Forbes magazine, the then richest hip-hop artist in the world. By 2014, he was once again arrested in Las Vegas in connection with a robbery charge in California and for having a suspended license. According to the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, Suge and comedian Cat Williams were suspects in a Beverly Hills robbery where they allegedly stole a camera from a paparazzo. The photographer suffered minor injuries, and both Suge and Williams were charged with 1 count of second-degree robbery. In 2014, Forbes estimated that Diddy was worth $700 million. By this time, it was boring watching Suge fall. Why? Because he was taking too long to hit rock bottom. He was still kicking. So the universe, in its most ill-natured joke yet, pulled the wildest card on Suge. His health took a hit. While in jail, Suge began experiencing chest pain and dizziness. He knocked himself out in his jail cell and had to be hospitalized for a blood clot located in his lung. And as if this wasn't bad rough, Suge got the nails to the coffin and helped the devil find the hammer when in 2015, he got into a heated argument with 2 men, Terry Carter and CLE Sloan, who happened to be his friends. One moment they are talking, the next, he's running over them with his truck. Terry Carter passed away due to his injuries, and CLE Sloan suffered head and foot injuries. Eventually, Suge was sentenced to 28 years after pleading no contest to involuntary manslaughter. The man's pushing 60 right now, so by the time he's out, he'd be almost 80. Suge Knight is over, and Diddy just released a track with Teyana Taylor. So who won? KEEFE D says he'd known Suge Knight since they was kids, but who do you think he fears at the moment, I ask you? The only way the field will be leveled is if KEEFE D and his buddies in the force can find a way to build a case against Diddy. Who knows if that will ever happen? All we can do is wait and see. If you enjoyed this expose, click on a video on your screen to watch even more interesting mini documentaries like this one, and I'll see you there.